The spaceport of New Mesa sat under a sky the color of rust. Dust blew across the landing pads and coated everything in a fine layer of red dirt. This was a frontier world, far from the shining cities of Earth and its core colonies. People came here to work the mines, to escape their pasts, or to disappear entirely. Danny had come here for all three reasons. He stood outside his repair shop, wiping grease from his hands with an old rag. A transport ship had just landed, its engines whining as they cooled down. Danny watched without much interest. Ships came and went every day. They brought miners, supplies, and sometimes trouble. He had learned to mind his own business years ago. But something about the commotion near the transport caught his attention. A crowd was gathering, and he could hear shouting. Danny walked closer, telling himself he was just curious. He pushed through the small group of humans and aliens who had stopped to watch. A trader stood at the bottom of the ship's ramp. There were reptilian creatures with scales the color of dark mud and eyes like yellow stones. They were known throughout the galaxy as merchants who would sell anything to anyone. This one held a chain in his clawed hand, and at the end of that chain was a female alien unlike any Danny had seen before. She was thin, far too thin. Her skin was a pale blue, and it should have shimmered in the light, but it looked dull and lifeless. Her eyes were large and silver, and they held a terror that Danny recognized. He had seen that look in the mirror after the pirates took everything from him. She wore clothes that were little more than rags, torn and dirty. Bruises marked her arms and neck. They yanked the chain, and she stumbled forward. She did not cry out. Danny suspected she had learned that crying only made things worse. "I am here to deliver this female to Holt," they announced in a voice like stones grinding together. "She is his contracted bride, bought and paid for." Danny felt his stomach turn. He knew Holt. Everyone in New Mesa knew him. Holt owned the biggest mining operation on the planet. He was rich and cruel and believed that his money made him untouchable. There were rumors about what happened to people who worked for him, about accidents that were not accidents at all. The thought of this frightened creature being delivered to that man made Danny's hands curl into fists. The crowd muttered but did nothing. No one wanted trouble with Holt. Danny understood. He had spent 5 years avoiding trouble himself. Keep your head down, do your work, stay alive. That was how you survived on the frontier. The trader walked toward the spaceport office to complete his paperwork. He tied the chain to a post like the female was an animal. She stood there in the hot wind, her silver eyes staring at the ground. The crowd began to drift away. The show was over. Danny should have walked away too. This was not his problem. He had his shop, his routine, his quiet life. Getting involved would only bring pain. He knew this. He believed this. But his feet carried him toward her anyway. She flinched when she saw him coming. Her whole body tensed, and she pressed herself back against the post. Danny stopped a few feet away and held up his hands to show he meant no harm. "Easy," he said softly. "I am not going to hurt you." She did not respond. Her eyes darted between his face and his hands, watching for any sudden movement. Danny reached for the water bottle on his belt. He moved slowly, the way you would move around a wounded animal. He held the bottle out to her. "Water," he said. "You look like you need it." She stared at the bottle for a long moment. Then, with trembling hands, she took it. She drank deeply, water running down her chin. When the bottle was empty, she looked at him with confusion. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was rough from disuse, and her common was broken and accented. "Because you were thirsty," Danny said simply. "No," she shook her head. "Why you help what you want?" It was a fair question. In her experience, kindness probably always came with a price. Danny wished he had a better answer for her. "I do not want anything," he said. "I just saw someone who needed help." Tears formed in her silver eyes. She blinked them away quickly, as if crying was a weakness she could not afford. "Please," she whispered, "please not let them take me to him. I hear stories. He is monster. He will hurt me. He will break me, please." Danny looked at her. He looked at the marks on her skin, at the fear in her eyes, at the chain around her neck. He thought about his wife and daughter, gone 5 years now. He thought about all the times he had wished someone would have helped them. No one had. The pirates came and went, and no one did a thing. The trader was walking back from the office, paperwork in hand. Danny made a decision that surprised even himself. "How much?" he asked the trader. The stopped and looked at him with those cold yellow eyes. "What?" "The female. How much did Holt pay for her?" The trader laughed, a harsh sound like breaking glass. "More than you have, human. She cost 8,000 credits. 8,000 credits. It was everything Danny had. Every credit he had saved over 5 years of work. His emergency fund. His future. All of it. "I will pay it," Danny said. "Right now, transfer her contract to me." The stared at him. The female stared at him. Even Danny was not sure what he was doing. "You are serious," the trader said. "I am." The trader shrugged. Money was money. He did not care who paid it. "Your funeral, human. Holt will not be happy when he learns what you did." "Let me worry about Holt." The paperwork took only minutes. Danny transferred his entire savings to the trader. In return, he received a contract that made the female his responsibility. He looked at the document and felt sick. People should not be bought and sold like cargo. He walked to the female and unlocked the chain from her neck. She stood frozen, unable to believe what was happening. "Come with me," Danny said. "I have a shop nearby. You can rest there." "I am yours now?" she asked quietly. Danny shook his head. "No, you are not mine. You are yours. I just bought your freedom, not you. You can leave whenever you want. But for now, let me get you somewhere safe." She followed him through the dusty streets of New Mesa. She did not speak, and neither did he. When they reached his shop, he showed her inside. It was small and cluttered with tools and parts, but it was clean and it was safe. "What is your name?" he asked. She said softly, "I am Danny. Welcome to New Mesa. No one is going to hurt you here, I promise." She looked at him with those silver eyes, and for the first time, a tiny spark of hope flickered in their depths. Behind them, the sun was setting over the spaceport, and somewhere in the mining compound on the edge of town, Holt was about to learn that his purchased bride had been stolen by a mechanic with nothing left to lose. Danny gave his bedroom. It was a small room at the back of the shop with a narrow bed, a window that looked out at the desert, and a door that locked from the inside. He showed her how to use the lock and told her she could stay there as long as she needed. "Where will you sleep?" she asked. "I have a cot in the workshop. I have slept there plenty of times before." Looked at the bed, then at him, then at the lock on the door. She was waiting for the catch. There was always a catch. "I do not understand," she said. "You spend all your money on me. You give me your room. What do you expect?" Danny leaned against the doorframe and crossed his arms. "I expect you to get some rest. That is all." "That is not how things work." "Maybe not where you come from, but this is how I work. Get some sleep. You are safe here." He walked away before she could argue further. Stood alone in the room for a long time, listening to the sounds of him settling into the workshop. She tested the lock 3 times before she finally believed it would hold. Then she lay down on the bed, the first real bed she had touched in months, and cried until she fell asleep. The next morning, Danny was already working when woke up. She found him under the belly of an old cargo ship, replacing parts and humming tunelessly to himself. She stood in the doorway of the workshop and watched him. He noticed her after a few minutes and slid out from under the ship. "Morning. There is food in the kitchen. Help yourself." "I am not hungry." Danny gave her a look that said he did not believe her. "When was the last time you ate a real meal?" Could not remember. The trader had fed her just enough to keep her alive. Before that, her own people had barely done better. She had been a burden to them, a debt to be sold. "Eat something," Danny said gently. "Then rest. That is all you need to do today." She ate. The food was simple but filling, and her stomach ached at the sudden abundance. Then she rested, and the next day was the same, and the day after that. Danny asked nothing of her. He did not touch her. He barely even looked at her. He simply went about his work and left her alone. By the fourth day, could not stand it anymore. "I need to do something," she told him. "I cannot just sit here." Danny looked up from the engine he was rebuilding. "You do not have to work. You are not my employee. I need to feel useful. Please, let me help." He considered this for a moment. Then he nodded. "All right, can you hand me that wrench?" She did, and from that moment she became part of the shop. Learned quickly that Danny was not a rich man. His shop was small, and his customers were mostly miners and traders who needed cheap repairs. He worked long hours and charged fair prices, even when he could have charged more. She watched him turn away a job from a man who wanted him to modify a ship's transponder to avoid custom scans. She watched him spend extra time fixing an old woman's shuttle, even though she could only pay half his fee. "You could make more money," observed one evening, "if you were less honest." Danny shrugged. "Probably, but I like being able to sleep at night." On the seventh day, Holt's men came. There were 3 of them, big humans with hard faces and weapons on their belts. They walked into the shop like they owned it. Danny put down his tools and stood to face them. "You are Danny," the leader said. It was not a question. "I am." "You have something that belongs to Mr. Holt, a female. He wants her delivered to his compound by sunset." Danny did not move. His voice was calm when he spoke. "She does not belong to Holt. I bought her contract legally. She stays with me." The man laughed. "You think a piece of paper matters out here. Holt gets what Holt wants. That is how things work on this rock." "Not in my shop." The first punch came fast. Danny blocked it, but the second one caught him in the ribs. The third split his lip. He fought back, landing a few hits of his own, but 3 against 1 was not a fair fight. They beat him to the ground and kicked him while he was down. Watched from the shadows of the back room. Her hands covered her mouth to keep from screaming. She could run. The back door was right there. She could disappear into the desert and save herself. But Danny had not run. Danny had stood in front of these men and taken a beating rather than give her up. Why would anyone do that? "Tell your boss," Danny spat through bloody teeth, "that she is not for sale. Not now, not ever." The leader kicked him one more time. "Holt will hear about this, and next time we will not be so gentle." They left, waited until their footsteps faded before rushing to Danny's side. He was a mess. His face was swelling and blood dripped from his nose and mouth. He tried to sit up and groaned in pain. "Do not move," said. She ran to get water and clean cloths. She had seen enough injuries among her own people to know basic care. She cleaned his wounds with gentle hands. He winced but did not complain. When she finished, she sat back and looked at him with confusion. "Why?" she asked, the same question she had asked at the spaceport. "Why did you do that?" Danny touched his swollen lip and winced. "Do what?" "Let them hurt you. You could have given me to them. You could have saved yourself." "No, I could not have." "Why not?" Danny was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "Because I used to have a family, a wife, a daughter. Pirates came to our colony 6 years ago. I was away on a job. By the time I got back, they were gone, killed. And nobody helped them, nobody even tried." Felt her heart break a little at the pain in his eyes. "I swore that if I ever had the chance to help someone who needed it, I would, no matter the cost." He looked at her with a sad smile. "So that is why. Because everyone deserves someone willing to fight for them, even if they think they do not." Did not know what to say. In her entire life, no one had ever fought for her. Her family had sold her to pay a debt. They had treated her like cargo. She had believed that was all she was worth. But this human, this quiet mechanic with grease under his fingernails and blood on his face, saw something different. "Thank you," she whispered. The words felt too small for what she meant. Danny nodded slowly. You should get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. What about you? I will be fine. I have had worse. Helped him to the cot in the workshop. She brought him water and painkillers from the medical kit. Before she left for her room, she paused at the door. Danny. Yeah. I do not know what I am worth, but I know that you are worth more than you think. She left before he could respond. In the darkness of the workshop, Danny stared at the ceiling and wondered what he had gotten himself into. His whole body ached, and Holt would be coming for revenge. But for the first time in 5 years, he felt like he had done something that mattered. 3 weeks passed and changed. The hollows in her cheeks filled out. Her blue skin began to shimmer the way it was supposed to, catching the light like water under moonlight. She stood now, and the fear in her silver eyes had faded to something softer, something almost like peace. She had also become the best thing that ever happened to Danny's shop. The she explained had a natural ability to sense electromagnetic fields. It was how her species communicated across distances, how they found their way through the darkness of there. But it also meant she could feel the flow of energy through machines. She could sense where wires were broken, where circuits had failed, where power was leaking. This ship has a problem in the starboard engine, she said one morning, placing her palm flat against the hull of a trader's vessel. There is a short in the power relay, third junction from the intake. Danny checked. She was right. The job that would have taken him hours to diagnose took her seconds. Word spread. Soon, miners and traders were coming from all over the region to have the female look at their ships. Danny had to turn away work for the first time in years. He offered to pay for her help, but she refused. You bought my freedom, she said. This is how I pay you back. You do not owe me anything. I know, that is why I want to help. They fell into a routine. Danny worked on the physical repairs while diagnosed the problems. They ate meals together in the small kitchen behind the shop. In the evenings, they sat on the roof and watched the stars come out over the desert. Told him about her. It was a cold planet with long nights, and her people lived in vast underground cities lit by bioluminescent plants. She had been trained as a technician, one of the best in her generation. But her family had accumulated debts they could not pay, and among the debts were inherited. When the collectors came, they took her as payment. My own mother handed me the chain, said quietly. She said I should be honored to serve the family this way. Danny did not know what to say. He reached out and took her hand. She did not pull away. He told her about his wife, Laura, and his daughter, Emma. He told her about the colony where they had lived, about the little house with the garden Laura had planted, about the way Emma used to laugh when he carried her on his shoulders. He told her about the day he came home to find nothing but ashes and bodies. I stopped living after that, he admitted. I came here because it was far away from everything that reminded me of them. I thought if I could just be numb, I would be okay. But numb is not the same as okay. No, agreed, it is not. They sat in comfortable silence, two broken people finding solace in each other's company. The town of New Mesa began to accept. The human miners nodded to her when she passed. The shopkeepers stopped charging her extra for goods. Even some of the aliens who had looked at her with contempt began to treat her with respect. She was no longer a piece of property. She was Danny's partner, and everyone knew what he had risked to protect her. Not everyone was happy about this. One afternoon, a shuttle landed at the spaceport bearing the emblem of the collective. 3 aliens of species emerged, their skin shimmering in shades of deep violet that marked them as highborn. They walked through town asking questions until they found Danny's shop. Recognized them immediately. The leader was her uncle, her mother's brother. He had been one of the ones who voted to sell her. Of the third house, her uncle said formally, "We have come to bring you home." Stood very still. Danny moved to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. I have no home among the replied. Your collective sold me. A mistake that we wish to correct. When we learned you had been purchased by a human, the shame was unbearable. You belong with your own kind. Belong? His voice sharpened. I belong to my family and they sold me like livestock. I belong to a trader who chained me like an animal. Now you say I belong with you. No, I choose where I belong. Her uncle's silver eyes narrowed. You would choose this human over your own people. Looked at Danny. He looked back at her, his expression carefully neutral. He would not try to influence her decision. That was not who he was. Yes, she said, I choose him. He has shown me more kindness in 3 weeks than the showed me in my entire life. You disgrace your family. My family disgraced me first. The delegation left with cold words and colder looks. They could not force to return. Human law protected her choice, and the collective would not risk a diplomatic incident over one female. But her uncle made it clear that she would never be welcome among her people again. When they were gone, let out a breath she had been holding. Her hands were shaking. Are you okay? Danny asked. I will be. She turned to face him. Danny, I need to tell you something. You can tell me anything. She took a deep breath. When I first came here, I was waiting for you to show your true nature. I was waiting for you to hurt me, to use me, to prove that you were like everyone else. But you never did. You just kept being kind day after day, asking nothing in return. Danny shifted uncomfortably. I am not special. I just try to do what is right. That is what makes you special. Stepped closer to him. Among my people, worth is measured by what you can provide to others. I was told my worth was the debt I could pay, but you showed me something different. You showed me that worth is not something given or taken. It is something you carry inside yourself. Danny felt his heart beating faster. He had been alone for so long. He had convinced himself that was how it had to be. But standing herewith, he realized that was just another lie he told himself to avoid feeling anything. He said softly, I do not want you to feel obligated to me. I did not save you to get something in return. I know that is why I am choosing this, not from obligation, from something else. She reached up and touched his face gently. I think you humans call it love. Before Danny could respond, an explosion rocked the night. They ran outside to see flames rising from the spaceport. Sirens began to wail across the town. And in the flickering light of the fire, Danny saw Holt's men moving through the streets. He is coming for us, said. Danny took her hand. Then we face him together. The night of reckoning had finally arrived. The explosion at the spaceport was a distraction. Danny knew it the moment he saw Holt's men fanning out through the streets instead of heading toward the fire. This was not an accident. This was a coordinated attack. Inside, he said, pulling back into the shop. He locked the door and started grabbing tools that could double as weapons. A heavy wrench, a plasma cutter, anything that might help them survive the next few hours. How many? Asked. Her voice was steady, but Danny could see the fear in her eyes. I counted at least 10, maybe more. What do we do? Danny handed her a metal rod. We fight, and we hope someone in this town still remembers that I fixed their ships for cheap. The first assault came minutes later. 3 men tried to break through the front door. Danny met them with the plasma cutter, using it like a torch to drive them back. One of them screamed as the superheated blade caught his arm. They retreated into the darkness to regroup. They will try the back next, Danny said. He was right. 2 more came through the workshop's rear entrance, was waiting for them. She could not match their strength, but she had something better. She pressed her hands against the wall and reached out with her senses, feeling the electromagnetic fields of their weapons. A pulse of energy from her mind, focused and precise, and both plasma pistols shorted out in their hands. The men stared at their useless weapons in confusion. Danny hit the first one with his wrench before he could recover. The second one ran. You can disable weapons, Danny asked, breathing hard. Only at close range, and it tires me quickly. Was already looking pale from the effort. I can maybe do it 2 or 3 more times. Save your strength, we might need it. The attack stopped for a while. Danny knew they were regrouping, waiting for reinforcements. He used the time to barricade the doors and windows. The shop was not a fortress, but it would have to do. An hour passed, then 2. The town outside was quiet except for the distant crackle of the spaceport fire. Then Danny heard something unexpected. Voices outside, many voices, and they were not speaking the harsh tones of Holt's mercenaries. He risked a look through a crack in the barricade. What he saw made his heart swell with hope. Miners, dozens of them. They were gathering in the street in front of his shop, carrying tools and old weapons and anything else they could find. He recognized faces among them. Old Pete, whose shuttle Danny had fixed for half price when the man lost his wife. Maria and her husband, whose cargo hauler Danny had saved from the scrap heap. The Thornton brothers, who owed Danny 3 dinners and a bottle of whiskey for getting their transport running after a sandstorm. An alien was with them too, a tall male named who ran the supply depot. Danny had helped him once when corrupt inspectors tried to shut down his business. Now he stood with the humans, his 4 arms holding makeshift weapons. "Danny," someone shouted from the crowd, "you still alive in there?" Danny the door and stepped outside. "Barely. What are you all doing here?" Old Pete stepped forward. His weathered face was grim. "We heard Holt was making a move on you. Figured we owed you one." "You do not owe me anything." "Maybe not, but a man who stands up to Holt deserves someone standing with him." Pete spat on the ground. "Besides, we are tired of that snake thinking he owns this town." More people arrived as the night went on. Some of them Danny knew. Others were strangers who had simply heard that someone was finally fighting back against Holt. By midnight, nearly 50 people had gathered around the repair shop. Holt's mercenaries retreated. They had expected an easy target, not a small army. But Danny knew this was not over. Holt would not give up so easily. He was right. Just before dawn, a convoy of vehicles appeared on the horizon. Holt himself was coming, and he was bringing everyone he had. The final battle happened in the street in front of Danny's shop as the first light of morning painted the sky orange. Holt had 30 men, professional soldiers with real weapons and body armor. The townspeople had numbers and desperation. It should have been a massacre, but the mercenaries had not expected such fierce resistance. Miners who spent their days drilling through rock were not afraid of a fight. They knew how to use their tools as weapons, and they knew these streets better than any outsider. Danny fought in the middle of it all. He had no formal training, but 5 years on the frontier had taught him how to survive. He moved through the chaos with his plasma cutter, covering his neighbors, protecting the ones who fell. Stayed close to him. Whenever a mercenary got too near with a working weapon, she would reach out and disable it. Each time cost her more energy. Her skin was growing dull and her movements were slowing, but she refused to stop. The turning point came when managed to flank the mercenary line. His 4 arms made him a terror in close combat. He knocked down 3 soldiers in rapid succession, breaking their formation. The townspeople surged forward. Holt's men began to fall back, then to run. The miners chased them to the edge of town, whooping and hollering like they had just won the biggest jackpot in the mines. But Danny did not celebrate. He was scanning the battlefield, looking for one face. "Where is Holt?" he asked. Grabbed his arm. "There." She pointed toward the repair shop. Holt had used the chaos of the battle to slip away. He was not a fighter himself. He paid others to do his violence. But he was a vindictive man, and if he could not have his prize, he would make sure no one else could either. Danny saw the flames erupting from his shop's windows. Holt had set it on fire. "No," Danny ran toward the building, but strong hands held him back. "You cannot go in there," old Pete said. "It is too far gone." Danny watched his shop burn. Everything he had built over the past 5 years was turning to ash. His home, his livelihood, his memories appeared beside him. She was exhausted and battered, but she was alive. She took his hand and squeezed it. "I am sorry," she said. "This is my fault. If you had not taken me in, none of this would have happened." Danny looked at her silver eyes reflecting the flames, at the woman who had given him a reason to feel again. "I would do it all again," he said, "every bit of it." As dawn broke fully over New Mesa, the townspeople gathered around the ruins of the repair shop. They had won the battle, but the war was not over. Holt had escaped. He was still out there, probably already planning his revenge. Looked at the smoking rubble. Then she looked at Danny. Then she looked out toward the mining compound visible in the distance, where Holt had fled to lick his wounds. "This has to end," she said quietly. "What do you mean?" "As long as Holt is free, we will never be safe. He will keep coming until he destroys everything." She turned to face Danny. "I have an idea, but you will not like it." "Tell me." Took a deep breath. "I am going to end this myself." Before Danny could argue, she pressed a finger to his lips. "You taught me that everyone deserves someone willing to fight for them. Now let me fight for us. Let me fight for you." Danny wanted to refuse. Every instinct told him to keep her safe, to protect her the way he had failed to protect his family. But he looked into her eyes and saw something new there. Not fear, not desperation. Determination. "What do you need?" he asked. Smiled. It was the first real smile he had ever seen from her. "Just trust me." Holt's mining compound sat like a wound on the landscape. High walls surrounded clusters of processing plants, warehouses, and the mansion where Holt lived like a king. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter day and night. After his defeat in town, Holt had doubled security. He was not taking any more chances. He should have tripled it. Moved through the darkness like a ghost. Her species had evolved on a world of eternal night, and she could see in the dark as easily as humans saw in daylight. The guards never noticed the slim figure slipping past their patrols, pressing close to walls, timing her movements to the rhythm of their footsteps. She had told Danny her plan, and he had agreed only because she refused to let him come with her. This required stealth, not strength, and had spent her whole life being invisible. Now she would use that skill for herself. The compound security systems were sophisticated, but they relied on electronics. Pressed her palm against the wall near the main gate and reached out with her senses. She could feel the flow of electricity through the wires, the pulse of data through the networks. With careful concentration, she created a small blind spot in the surveillance grid, just enough for one person to pass through. She made her way toward the central building where Holt kept his offices. According to rumors she had gathered from the townspeople, this was where he stored his most important records. Records that would show every illegal deal he had ever made, every person he had trafficked, every law he had broken. If she could find that evidence and get it to the colonial authorities, Holt would be finished. The office was locked with a biometric scanner. Studied it for a moment, then placed her hand over the device. She had never tried this before, but the principle was the same as disabling weapons. She sent a pulse of energy into the scanner, overloading its circuits. The door clicked open. Inside, she found everything she needed and more. Holt was not just a cruel man. He was a monster. His records showed years of illegal mining operations that poisoned water supplies, bribes to colonial officials, smuggling networks that moved weapons, drugs, and people across the frontier. And there, buried in the files, were contracts just like hers. Dozens of them. Men and women and aliens bought and sold like property. Everything onto a data chip. Her hands were shaking, not from fear but from rage. She thought about all those people who had suffered the way she had suffered. Some of them were probably still here, locked away in the compound's labor facilities. She was about to leave when the lights came on. I knew you would come. Holt stood in the doorway. He was a thin man with cold eyes and a smile that never reached them. Two guards flanked him, their weapons trained on. The female who thinks she can defy me. Holt walked closer, studying her like she was an interesting insect. Do you know how much trouble you have caused me? My men were humiliated by a mob of miners. My reputation has suffered, all because a worthless alien decided she was too good for me. I am not worthless, said quietly. Holt laughed. Of course you are. Your own people sold you. That is all you are good for. Being sold, being used, being discarded when you are no longer useful. Met his gaze without flinching. A month ago she might have believed him. A month ago those words would have broken her, but not anymore. You are wrong, she said. My people sold me because they did not understand my worth, but I found someone who did, and he taught me something that you will never understand. And what is that? That worth is not given or taken. It is something you carry inside yourself, she smiled. And that data chip I just sent to the colonial marshals, that is you discovering your own worth, which is nothing at all. Holt's face went pale. You are bluffing. Check your systems. One of the guards pulled out a communicator. His expression changed as he read the incoming messages. Sir, we are receiving transmissions from Colonial Command. They have dispatched marshals. They will be here within the hour. Holt turned back to, his face twisted with fury. Kill her. The guards raised their weapons, closed her eyes and prepared herself. She had done what she came to do. If this was the price, she would pay it. The shots never came. The wall behind Holt exploded inward as a mining vehicle crashed through it. Danny was at the controls, and behind him came the townspeople of New Mesa. They poured through the breach with weapons raised and vengeance in their eyes. Get away from her, Danny said, climbing down from the vehicle. His voice was calm, but his eyes were deadly. Holt's guards looked at the crowd, then at their employer, then at each other. They dropped their weapons and put their hands up. No paycheck was worth dying for a man who was already finished. Holt tried to run. He did not get far. Old Pete caught him with a tackle that would have impressed a professional athlete. Within seconds, Holt was face down on the floor with miners standing over him. Danny rushed to, "Are you hurt?" "No, I am fine." She threw her arms around him and held on tight. "You came for me." "Of course I did. Did you think I was going to let you have all the fun?" The colonial marshals arrived just as the sun was rising. They took Holt into custody along with all the evidence had gathered. Within days, news of his crimes had spread across the frontier. His mining operation was shut down. His victims were freed. His name became synonymous with corruption and cruelty. Was called a hero. News services wanted to interview her. Officials wanted to give her awards. She refused all of it. "I did not do it for fame," she told Danny. "I did it so we could finally be free." In the weeks that followed, the townspeople helped Danny rebuild his shop. It was bigger than before, with a proper living space attached instead of just a cramped bedroom. People donated materials and labor as thanks for everything he had done for them over the years. On the day the new shop opened, Danny found standing on the roof, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and red. "It is beautiful," she said when he joined her. "It is," but he was not looking at the sunset, he was looking at her. Turned to face him. Her skin shimmered in the fading light, and her silver eyes held a warmth that had not been there when they first met. "Danny, I need to ask you something." "Anything." "When you bought my contract, you said I was free to leave whenever I wanted. You said I was my own person." She took his hands in hers. "But what if I do not want to be alone anymore? What if I want to be yours, not because of any contract, but because I choose it?" Danny felt his heart pounding in his chest. "Then I would ask if you would marry me, not as a purchase, not as an arrangement, but as partners, equals, for as long as we both live." I would say yes. They were married a month later in a ceremony attended by half the town. Humans and aliens stood side by side, watching as a quiet mechanic and an alien who had arrived in rags pledged their lives to each other. Old Pete cried, though he had afterward, even seemed moved, all four of his arms dabbing at his eyes. 6 months after the wedding, a transport ship landed at the spaceport. Danny and were working in the shop when they heard the commotion outside. They went to investigate and found a crowd gathered around a young alien female, barely more than a child, with matted fur and haunted eyes. She had stowed away on the transport, fleeing from something terrible. Danny looked at Danny. They did not need to speak. They both knew exactly what to do. Danny crouched down to meet the young alien's eyes. He held out his hand, just as he had done at this same spaceport months ago. "You look like you could use some help," he said gently. "Come with us, you are safe now." The young alien looked at his hand, then at who smiled with understanding. Slowly, hesitantly, she reached out and took it. That night, as they made up a bed for their unexpected guest, stood at the window and watched the stars come out. "What are you thinking?" Danny asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "I am thinking about worth," she said softly. "When I came here, I thought I was worthless. I thought my only value was what others decided I could be sold for. But you saw something different. You saw my true worth before I could see it myself. And now—" She turned in his arms and smiled up at him. "Now I understand that worth is not about what we can do for others or what price we can bring. It is about what we choose to become, who we choose to love, how we choose to live." Danny kissed her forehead. "That sounds like wisdom. I learned it from a human mechanic who gave up everything to save a stranger." In the small room behind them, a frightened young alien was finally falling asleep in a real bed for the first time in her life. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance. And in a rebuilt repair shop on a dusty frontier world, two people who had been broken found that together, they were whole. The galaxy was vast and often cruel, but kindness could be found in unexpected places. And sometimes, the greatest worth was discovered not in what we possess, but in what we give away.